We're here today with Caleb Palmquist, the creator of the Vampire Unicorn Hunter, right? Did I say that?
Unicorn Vampire Hunter.
Unicorn Vampire Hunter. Sorry.
All good.
So how you doing, Caleb?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for coming on and taking the time to talk with us today.
No problem.
So tell us what the first book is about.
Okay. Unicorn Vampire Hunter is an all ages adventure comic book about a unicorn that hunts vampires with his horn. That's basically the whole pitch. It's sort of inspired by Pixar movies, Disney movies like Frozen and Tangled. It's got that kind of vibe, but it's fun, and it's heartfelt. And we did the first issue late last year, which was really successful, and now we're back on Kickstarter with the second issue right now.
And when does the Kickstarter end?
The Kickstarter ends at the end of the month, like April 29th, I think.
All right. And do you have a catch-up tier so people can get the first one?
I absolutely do. Yep, we have different tiers, a digital and a physical catch-up tier, and then we have a bunch of other cool stuff you can get on the Kickstarter too.
Nice. Are you a one-man band, or do you have a team that you work with?
Yeah, I have a team. I'm the writer and creator of the book, but the book is drawn by Daryl Toe, who is an artist who's worked on, now that I have to name the other books that he's worked on, I'm totally spacing. Oh Joy Sex Toy, that's not an all ages book, but he's worked on that. And he's really cool, amazing. Oh, Is Nana the Werespider is another book that he worked on, which is a book I love. And then our letterer is Dave Lentz, who has worked on so many books. It would be meaningless to list them. Any cool indie book that you can think of on Kickstarter, there's a good chance Dave Lentz is attached to it. So.
All right, cool. Is this your first comic book ever?
Nope, not at all. I did a book about 4 or 5 years ago called A Small Favor, which was a sci-fi, like a sort of sci-fi historical fiction thing that was all over the place and nobody really knew what it was about, and it never really found an audience. And then a couple years ago, I did an anthology book called Modern Mythology, which was a collaboration between like 30 different creators that was a bunch of different stories of like classic mythology retold in the modern day.
All right. Why did you choose to go with all ages?
I chose to go with all ages just because most of my favorite stories, honestly, are all ages stories. I came up with the idea for Unicorn Vampire Hunter. I mean, the idea I came up with like 10 years ago. It wasn't until about 5 years ago that I decided I wanted to make it into a comic book. But when I was thinking about it, I think the concept, a unicorn that kills vampires with his horn, could easily be sort of like a rated M, like off the wall thing. But if you look around on Kickstarter, I feel like that sort of thing has been done a lot. Silly concept, and it's like really gory and over the top, and some of them are really cool. But I really wanted to do something that hit a tone that was something that I would want to read. Things like Avatar: The Last Airbender or Frozen. I mean, those are things that I personally love, and I could sit and watch those things with my 8-year-old niece. And so, I think that's a huge motivating factor, is that I wanted like my 8-year-old niece to be able to read the book that I'm writing and to enjoy it. So yeah.
Has she read your book?
She hasn't read Unicorn Vampire Hunter yet, but she will at some point, I'm sure. I have gotten the good news is I have gotten like a good handful of messages from fans who specifically told me that their very young kids, enjoyed the book and were excited for the next one, which is really cool. I mean, that's really flattering. I think because kids are honest, right?
Oh yeah.
Like kids are like other people on Kickstarter who backed your book might say, "Oh yeah, man, it was great because they want to support you and like it's, like a big family." But kids aren't going to tell you something was awesome unless they really thought it was awesome.
Agreed. Is your book in comic book stores? Can they request it at their local comic shop?
So not yet. At some point, that might be something that's on the table. That's not something I can go into a ton of detail about, given like publishing deals. But yeah. So right now, the only way to get it is through the Kickstarter. I will say eventually it will be available in comic stores. Just it's going to be some time before that happens.
All right. You don't have a website or anything?
I do have a website. I just don't sell my comics on my website because I am a fool, I guess. I should. I definitely should. Yeah. So I do so when unicornvampirehunter.com redirects to my personal website when I don't have a Kickstarter going on, my name, calebpalmquist.com, goes to my personal website where I like have information about all my comics and stuff and where you can follow what I'm doing.
All right. Let's see. Is this your first Kickstarter ever? Did you kickstart your first books?
Oh yeah, I've been doing the Kickstarter thing since about 2017. Yeah, to me, Kickstarter has sort of always been an inextricable part of it, just because of the way that funding works and financing works. I mean, obviously, for any of us to do this, we have to put a lot of our own personal money into it. There's no other way, but it's not sustainable for someone who just like works a regular 9 to 5 to like continually make comic books without having that funding source. Mm-hmm. And so I have, with the exception of like little tiny stories that I did here and there, I've never done anything in comics that wasn't attached to Kickstarter.
All right. Do you do any paid writing for people?
Oh, no. No. That's a good question, because I'd love for, if anyone's out there listening who wants to pay me to write a story, hit me up, because I'll do it. I've done some work in other books. Most recently, I did a story in Travis Gibbs' Cthulhu Invades Oz anthology, which was pretty cool. That was, I guess you could say that was paid work. I wanted to do that though, so I didn't really think of it as paid work, because it was just like, like bunch of people, other creators that I really admire were all working on this book. And so, I got an opportunity to be part of it. I would have done it for free. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, we know Travis Gibbs. I don't know if you can see back there, but we got his Voodoo Nation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after. It's about you, not Travis. So how was it working with, I think it was like 30 plus creators, wasn't it?
On the Cthulhu? Oh yeah. It's cool. It's interesting because I ran an anthology book 2 years ago called Modern Mythology, and at that point I had never contributed to one. And so I was like running the whole team. And then when I was contributing to Travis's anthology, it was a very different experience, obviously, because I was just like one cog in the machine, but like Travis was actually really cool, because he did a lot of the facilitating of like, okay, if there's a writer that doesn't have an artist attached right now, I can find you an artist. And so I went into that book because Travis invited me to participate, and he was like, do you have an artist you want to work with? And I said, I don't know. Like right now, I'm not sure if I have anyone available. And then like the next thing I know, he's turning around and he's introducing me to Eric Hawkins, who was the artist on the story that I wrote for that book. And so it was like, honestly, Travis did like pretty much all the work. He did the introduction with the artist, and and everything else, and I just wrote the story, and then everything just happened, and then like, so it was cool because I think Travis was like so highly motivated to get the whole thing going and to make the whole thing happen. And when you're running a project like that, you kind of have to be. But he takes it to another level of like being like really involved in making sure everyone can take part, and like, all these connections, the right artists and the right writers are connected together, which was really cool. But outside of that, it's, I didn't really have all that much interaction during the process of creating the project with the other people, because all the stories are separate and they're kind of put together. But yeah, it was
What
cool.
was your story about? Give us a little snippet of what.
The story in Cthulhu was called How to Responsibly Own a Dog in the Land of Oz, which was about Toto, and in the suggestion in the story is essentially that Dorothy is an abusive dog owner, and so Toto turns on Dorothy in my story. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, well, I work for the printer that printed the book, but I got to get a copy from Travis. I haven't read it yet myself.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good. It's cool.
Let's see. I'm trying to think of some more questions. I don't know. Is there anything that you want to tell us that we haven't touched on yet?
No. I mean, just like the Unicorn book is on, Unicorn Vampire Hunter is on Kickstarter right now, and then later this year I'll have some more stuff coming out, including, I guess I could talk about, speaking of anthologies, this year Modern Mythology, the second volume of Modern Mythology, is going to be kickstarting, and that Travis has actually wrote a story for that book. He didn't participate in my first one, but then after he invited me to participate in the Cthulhu book, then I was going to do a second Modern Mythology, and so I got him involved, and a lot of people that weren't involved in the first one are involved in the second one, and that'll be sometime this summer. I'll be doing that, so that should be cool. I'm definitely excited about that. There's a lot of really fun stories in that book.
All right, what is that about? Like, is it? Do you take a theme, or
yeah? So basically, like in the first book, it was specifically hero myths, and so everyone who participated got to pitch a story, like a hero myth from any culture around the world, that then they reinterpreted to be set in the modern day. And then this new book, I opened it up a little more because I had a lot of people requesting to do stories that didn't fit within like the hero myth thing. And so this one is a little bit more expanded. It's just more stories from anywhere in mythology, from any mythology around the world. Then the writers got to pick those stories and reinterpret them in a modern lens, like taking place in the modern day. And so we've got, literally stories from all around the world in this new one. Australian Aboriginal myths. There's Hawaiian myth. Trying to remember all the ones off the top of my head. We got a couple of Greek ones, of course, and then in the first volume we had Greg Anderson Elise, who does Is None of the Werespider, actually did an Is None of the Werespider story for Modern Mythology, which is really cool. So it's just like a cool like celebration of mythology and cultures from around the world, and it's a lot of fun.
Are you all filled up? Do you know all the artists and?
Yes. So I haven't announced the full team yet, but yeah, okay. As of this month, all the stories are done. It's locked in. All I got to do is wrote my letterer and designer Dave Lentz. Typically I take when I have a project finished or all the art assets on a project finished, I just like bundle that up into a file, just kind of throw it in his direction and say, make this look good. So I'm going to be doing that pretty soon. And which is going to be cool because, when you go to Kickstarter, a lot of times you're kind of finishing a project as you get it to Kickstarter, or in some cases going to Kickstarter before the project is finished. And I've done it at all different stages. I've Kickstarted something when it's barely been started and then deliver it a long time later. I've done stuff where it's been 100% completed when I've launched and then been able to deliver as soon as it's over. And with Modern Mythology, I'm going to be able to do that. And Unicorn Vampire Hunter is in the same boat. I'm honestly trying to like move more and more in that direction of like everything's done. So when you kickstart something that when you back something I'm kickstarting, like you're going to get it, you know, in a couple months after the Kickstarter's over. Because, you know, I want people to be able to get the thing in their hands while they're still excited about it, you know, because I've definitely been there when I back Kickstarters, and you know, projects take different amounts of time. I'm always excited when I get something I Kickstarted, but you know, there's definitely times where you back something and then you've completely forgotten about it, and like a year and a half later, you get it in the mail, and you're like, oh, I forgot this even existed.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. No, I was asking about the anthology in case people had a story that they wanted to submit to you. Are you taking submissions or?
So if anyone has a Modern Mythology story they want to submit to me, you're welcome to contact me. And depending on how quickly you can get something done, there's still a possibility that I could get you in if you act fast. I can't say, you can always, even if it's too late, you can always submit to me. I don't know when or if Modern Mythology Volume 3 will happen, so I don't want to make any promises about that. If someone contacts me like in the next month, there is a chance that I could get them in, but I don't want to make any promises about that.
All right. And what advice would you give out there to new writers that's trying to start in the comic book industry or just start writing in general?
Okay. The thing that I've been thinking about lately a lot is because I've been, putting things out into the world for a while now, like 5-ish years in terms of comics. I got into a point where I was stuck where I wouldn't even start writing something unless I had a plan on how I was going to produce it. And so oftentimes I would like halt myself before I even got to the start line, because I was like, okay, I have this idea for this comic, but I don't know what artist would be good for it, and I don't know if I necessarily have the funding for this right now. So I'm like worrying about the funding for something before I've even started writing it, which is crazy. This is like the craziest thing ever. What a silly problem to have. So what I would say is, imagine that you've got the crack art team that you dream of. Imagine that you've got the funding that you need, because it's free to write. You don't have to pay anything to write. Write it as if you're going to have the resources that you want to have. And then if you don't have the resources, when it comes time to try to produce it, that's fine. Like, put it on a shelf. You can always come back to it. And it's practice. Everything that you write makes you better at writing.
All right. Is there anything you want to say to the people before we go, Caleb?
No, that's it. Just go to unicornvampirehunter.com if you want to check out the Kickstarter.
All right. Thank you, Caleb.